Hi. So today's reading is going to come again from the Tao of Pooh and the Te of Piglet, and we're going to be looking a little bit more at Piglet because this section is about the underdog. And it's a very long chapter, so I won't read the whole thing, but I thought I'm going to skip a little bit in front and talk about the themes, or read about the theme of the chapter. Taoist sympathies were always with the underdog, with the outcasts and unfortunates of Chinese society, including those financially ruined by the tricks of corrupt merchants and officials. The Chinese martial arts were developed primarily by Taoist and Buddhist monks in order to defend the defenseless and enable them to defend themselves. They might better be termed the anti-martial arts. Whilst Buddhist martial arts tended to concentrate on the hard forms of defense, like karate and taekwondo, Taoists tended to concentrate on the soft forms, such as the fluid and indirect Tai Chi Chuan and, sorry about my pronunciation, Pa Kwa Chang, so judo or aikido. So this is going to be about the underdog. We've got Piglet with us again. Not Piglet. Pete.
The underdog.
The underdog. Pete's called after Pete Doherty because I got him in England and he looked a bit, well, sometimes he looks happy and sometimes he looks very sad, but he's doing quite well here with us. He's recovering, isn't he? Okay, this chapter is called The Very Small Animal. The piglet lived in a very grand house in the middle of a beech tree, and the beech tree was in the middle of the forest, and the piglet lived in the middle of the house. Why is that funny?
Just because you called him Piglet.
Next to his house was a piece of broken board which had Trespassers W on it in capital letters. When Christopher Robin asked the piglet what it meant, he said it was his grandfather's name and had been in the family for a long time. Christopher Robin said you couldn't be called Trespassers W, and Piglet said yes you could, because his grandfather was, and it was short for Trespassers Will, which was short for Trespassers William, and his grandfather had had two names in case he lost one. Trespassers after an uncle, and William after Trespassers. So we are introduced to Piglet in the third chapter of Winnie the Pooh, who craves security. Piglet does. He lives in the middle of a house, in the middle of a tree, in the middle of a forest. Piglet, who wants to be somebody with a capital S, so he invents a grandfather named Trespassers William. Piglet, a squeaky voice with pink cheeks. Piglet, the very small animal. Unlike Pooh, who simply is and does, Piglet agonizes. For example, when Piglet and Pooh fell into the gravel pit. Pooh, he went on nervously and came a little closer. Do you think we're in a trap? Pooh hadn't thought about it at all, but now he nodded. For suddenly he remembered how he and Piglet had once made a Pooh trap for heffalumps, and he guessed what had happened. He and Piglet had fallen into the heffalump trap for Poohs. That was what it was. What happens when the heffalump comes? Asked Piglet, trembling, when he heard the news. Perhaps he won't notice you, Piglet, said Pooh encouragingly, because you are a very small animal. But he'll notice you, Pooh, He'll notice me, and I shall notice him, said Pooh, thinking about it. We'll notice each other for a long time, and then he'll say, ho, ho. Piglet shivered a little at the thought of that ho, ho, and his ears began to twitch. What will you say? He asked. Pooh tried to think of something he would say, but the more he thought, the more he felt that there is no real answer to ho, ho, said by a heffalump, in the sort of voice this heffalump was going to say it in. I shan't say anything, said Pooh at last. I shall just hum to myself, as if I was waiting for something. Then perhaps he'll say ho, ho again, suggested Piglet anxiously. He will, said Pooh. Piglet's ears twitched so quickly that he had to lean them against the side of the trap to keep them quiet. He will say it again, said Pooh, and I shall go on humming, and that will upset him, because when you say ho, ho twice in a gloating sort of way, the other person only hums, you suddenly find, just as you begin to say it the third time, that you find what Pooh means to say is it then isn't ho-ho-ish anymore. At least that's what we think he means. But he'll say something else, said Piglet. That's just it. He'll say, what's all this? And then I shall say, and this is a very, very good idea, Piglet, which I've just thought of. I shall say, it's a trap for a heffalump which I've made, and I'm waiting for a heffalump to fall in. And I shall go on humming, and that will unsettle him. Pooh, cried Piglet, you've saved us. Have I? Said Pooh, not feeling quite sure. But Piglet was quite sure, and his mind ran on, and he saw Pooh and the heffalump talking to each other, and he thought suddenly, and a little sadly, that it would have been rather nice if it had been Piglet and the heffalump talking so grandly to each other, and not Pooh, much as he loved Pooh, because he really had more brain than Pooh, and the conversation would go better if he and not Pooh were doing one side of it, and it would be comforting afterwards in the evenings to look back on the day when he answered a heffalump back as bravely as if the heffalump wasn't there. It seemed so easy now. He knew just what he would say. And that's how it was in the gravel pit, until Christopher Robin came along, looked down and saw Piglet and Pooh. Then things became a bit complicated. Ho, ho, said Christopher Robin loudly and suddenly. Piglet jumped 6 inches in the air with surprise and anxiety, but Pooh went on dreaming. It's the heffalump, thought Piglet nervously. Now then. He hummed in his throat a little so that none of the words should stick, and then in the most delightfully easy way he said, tra-la-la, tra-la-la. But he didn't look round, because if you look round and see a very fierce heffalump looking down at you, sometimes you forget that what you were going to say. Rum-tum tiddly-tum, said Christopher Robin in a voice like Pooh's. He said the wrong thing, thought Piglet anxiously. He ought to have said ho, ho again. Perhaps I had better say it for him. And as fiercely as he could, Piglet said, ho, ho. How did you get there, Piglet? Said Christopher Robin in his ordinary voice. Oh, this is terrible, thought Piglet. First he talks in Pooh's voice, and then he talks in Christopher Robin's voice, and he's doing it so as to unsettle me. And being now completely unsettled, he said very quickly and squeakily, "This is a trap for Poohs, and I'm waiting to fall in it. Ho ho! What's all this? And when I say ho ho again..." "What?" said Christopher Robin. "A trap for ho-hos," said Piglet huskily. I've just made it, and I'm waiting for the ho-ho to come. Not very impressive, we're afraid. "Oh, hello, Piglet. What's that rough-looking man I've seen following you about lately?" "He's my new bodyguard," squeaked Piglet. "Bodyguard? Why in the world do you need a bodyguard? Can't you look out for yourself?" "I suppose so," replied Piglet, "but I feel so much more secure this way." "He looks pretty tough. I hope you checked his references." "References?" "Yes, from places he's worked before. Does he have a bad record? Arrests, jail sentences, that sort of thing?" I don't think so," said Piglet. "Well, I suppose it's all right if you really think you need protection. By the way, what's happened to all the old family silverware?" "What?" "You know, the silver knives, forks, spoons and things. They're not in the drawer they used to be. I just wondered if anything..." "No," Piglet blurted out. "He couldn't have. I mean, they couldn't be. They must have been misplaced or something." "Yes, that's it. They must be. Oh, excuse me. I must be going. Goodbye." We might point out here that Taoism has always been fond of very small animals. Aside from animals themselves, which Confucianists saw as mere things to eat, sacrifice, or pull plows and wagons, the very small animals of traditional Confucianist-dominated Chinese society were women, children, and the poor. Stepped on by greedy merchants, landholders, and government officials, the poor were at the very bottom of the Confucianist social scale. To put it another way, they weren't on it at all. Women, even those of wealthy families, especially those of wealthy families, weren't much better off, as the Confucianists practiced arranged marriage, polygamy, foot breaking, actually, and other customs so repressive to women that no one in today's West would comprehend them. Children didn't have a very jolly time of it either. To the staunch Confucianist, children existed to carry the family line, unquestioningly obey their parents in every matter, and take every care of them in their old age. Not to have ideas, ideals, and interests of their own. Under Confucianism, a father could justifiably kill a son who disobeyed or disgraced him, as such behavior was considered criminal. And that tale seems to have put someone to sleep. So I think we'll leave it there for today. Thank you very much for listening. And I hope you're sleeping well, just like